Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Quest Like a Pro. My name is Noah Barnett. I'm the founder of Purple Shadow Gaming. And as always, for these set meta reviews, I'm joined by Andy, John, and Sir Lore, also known as Justin. Grateful to have you all back. Thanks for continuing to do it. The feedback has been great, so we're going to keep going through the different decks within the set 7 meta. The meta continues to evolve, so we want you to know whether you're watching this like right when it comes out or in 30 days. It's a live meta, but we're trying to do our best to really look at each of these decks holistically within the set 7 meta so that it can be more evergreen and can kind of give you perspective on how you might think about building these decks, even as the meta evolves or decks come and go, or maybe this deck is better than this deck at this point in time. But everything kind of comes full circle. So we want to make sure that we're covering each of these decks in complete. But before we get into this week's color or ink combination, how are y'all doing? Andy?
Doing well. Just playing more Lorcana after the 5K. Just refueled my passion to perfect the Blurple deck.
Perfect the Blurple deck.
Yes.
So for those that don't know, Andy is a go-to Blurple player. How did Blurple go for you this weekend? Like what's your thoughts on Blurple, even though that's not the deck choice we're doing today? But yeah, how is it performing? What do you think about its position in the meta?
I think it's like a tier 1.5 deck right now. I think you could only sway to one matchup, so I've been just like avoiding red blue, and just going straight to steel, like steel counters, tech cards, and it's been working out. During the 5K, I only played one red blue. And the other 5 wins I got to make top 16 were steel. So I just demolished the steel. And it worked out for my favor.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense though, because there's probably a higher percent of steel decks than Ruby Sapphire, like as a single deck versus like the collective steel collection.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, what about you? What have you been getting into in the world of Lorcana?
Trying out more weird lists, just seeing what does work, what doesn't work. Obviously, you can always just pick up blue steel and just run with it and have some wins, but it's more fun to play like this, purple amber Mufasa and see if it's got legs or not. Just the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, before we start recording, John goes, "Oh, I want to see if Panic's working." And I didn't know what he was referring to. He was actually referring to the card in set 7, Panic. And I'm like, why is that in a deck? So, John, why is Panic in your deck?
Because everything has a large health total, because Go-Go Tamago is not seeing much play. You can get away with running a bunch of things that have 5 to 7 health, and Panic will allow you to move damage off of those, on top of, obviously, Bell, which everyone's been running for a while, then the Nook if you want to get really aggressive into that idea.
Yeah. I've played it in draft because that card's insane in draft and sealed, but I haven't yet explored the purple Fossa deck, but maybe I'll give it a whirl. Justin's rocking his new PSG sweatshirt. Thanks for repping.
Yeah, it's so comfortable.
What's up in your world, Justin?
I'm not even a hoodie guy, but this is super comfortable. So I was sporting it. Yeah, I mean, reflecting on the weekend as well, learning to make sure you ink on turn 2. It's a good lesson learned.
Okay, so for those that don't know this story, because I feel like we're like, yeah. So how is that possible?
I got so wrapped up in like, okay, what am I gonna do? Turn 3, turn 4. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Cool, go ahead. Shoot. I even noticed it before he went. Probably could have been like, wait. But I was like, no, I passed the turn. And yeah, I got pretty smashed.
So this wasn't one of those weird like alter sevens, a single inkable, so you didn't have an option. Like it was a complete
No,
like.
I could have inked. Yep.
That
Yeah.
feels bad.
Yeah. First one I've
So
ever done
you've
that
heard it
before.
here on this podcast. If you want to level up, ink on turn 2. So there you go.
You got it.
Justin always bringing the heat. I love it.
Yeah. So lost 6 of my 7 die rolls, and so I won. I never lost on the play, and I always lost on the draw. So that felt really bad. Then when I realized I was playing kind of like that first build that Artifacts kind of built and pioneered with kind of mid-rangey one. It wasn't the aggro or the Lucky Dime version. And then and I was like, I'm not seeing this anywhere else. I'm only seeing the items, or I'm seeing like the aggro. And what Purple Steel loses to is the mid range one. I'm like, I'm gonna play Purple Steel tomorrow. So the next day I played Purple Steel and crushed all my red blue. Unfortunately, I ran into a unique purple steel build my first round that was kind of teched for the mirror, and so it just kept eating my one drops. I couldn't get a wide enough board, and my day didn't go as good as I'd planned, but ended up going 4-2, which is not quite good enough. That was my weekend.
I gotta ask you, Justin, how'd the game with your wife go?
That was the first day. Lost the die roll, right?
This is a die roll, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
He did lose on the draw, all right? Is that what he said? You lost on the draw every game.
I
Yeah.
almost got her one game on the draw, but she's out of cards, and then off the top was Doc, so she got right back
Always
into
is.
it. Doc and then strength, and just like, yep, you got it.
Doc's always there.
Doc's always
Yeah.
there. Yep.
I do think though it's like a neat thing, but like an unfortunate thing that once you're like so embedded in the community, obviously getting paired against your partner, your wife, your spouse or whatever is like unfortunate. But all this weekend, people got paired against friends. Like John, I think you played someone you drove with, like you live near, you test with, etc. Like people are being paired all over the place. But I think it just shows like the health of the community. Like it's like feels like every round you're playing against someone you like know or you're friends with or something like that. So even though it was 119 players or something like that, it still felt like there was a lot of people in that room that are part of the community, which is kind of cool and unique about Lorcana. The community is strong.
It is.
Definitely here
Phenomenal.
in Arizona, where we all are, but I hear the same sentiments across the country. The community is strong. Well, thanks for giving a recap of the week. We want to now dive into our continued Set 7 meta review. And today we're going to be discussing Amber Steel. Amber Steel has been a ink combination that's been popular pretty much, I think, since Set 1, right? Like Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel feel like the namesakes every meta. John or Andy, did you play Amber Steel back in Set 1? Did you guys play back in Set 1?
I did.
I
I played Amber Steel just because of Rapunzel. Favorite art, favorite card, favorite princess. So I had to play it.
Justin, did you play back in Set 1? Did you play Amber Steel or did you pilot a different deck?
I actually got into Lorcana in Set 3 about like 3 weeks before the set champs in week 3. The most I've done of Amber Steel, I did a little bit of Steel Song right after Naveen came out. And everybody was on the big Ursula at that point, that the 5-shift one, and it was just wrecking Steel Song, and everybody was targeting Steel Song super hard, and I was like, nope, not right now. And so I haven't gone back to it since.
Yeah, again, Amber Steel has just been one of these, every single set, I think it's been a contender or a top deck ever since back in Set 1, but especially around Set, I think it was like 3 or 4 with flutes. It's evolved, but it really hasn't evolved that much because, the namesake cards are still there. Not Doc specifically. This was supposed to filter and show Whole New World first, but, we missed that. That's my mistake. But Whole New World has just been like a go-to card since the beginning, and being able to cast Ariel, find Whole New World, and cast Whole New World has been something that people have been doing ever since Set 1 and continue to do that. And then now also with Doc, there's like new versions of Steel Song. So we're going to talk about 3/4 versions of Steel Song today in the Set 7 meta. But again, really, it hasn't changed that much because the core set of cards are so strong. It's very similar to like this Ruby Amethyst post Set 2, where for a long time, like it really just was the bounce package, and kind of, the majority of the purple cards really came out in Set 2. Amber Steel has a very strong showing with that as well. Again, there are now new versions with Doc that are closer to the ground and don't rely as much on that Whole New World card. But still, at the end of the day, Whole New World is still one of the strongest cards in this deck. And we're going to be talking about that. One thing we did want to talk about is kind of the core set of cards in Amber Steel. Like we mentioned, not much has changed. And this tournament result is actually proof of that. So the first list we're going to look at here is an Amber Steel Song Set 7 meta, but I don't think anything has changed. There's 0 Set 7 cards in here, unless I missed one. Anyone see one in here? I don't think
There's
so.
0.
Not really. So you have your Cinderella, your 1-drop, you have your Daisy Duck. This version's playing the Little Queen in the Shift package. You're playing Lilo and Doc, but really just one ofs. You're playing Smee. You're playing your Ariels, Piglet, Vanessa. You're playing Benja, Pete, Veen, as you mentioned, Justin. You got your Rapunzels just for Andy. You have the big Ariel, which is really interesting. And then you have your song package. You have Let the Storm Rage On, Strength of the Raging Fire, World's Greatest Criminal Mind, which I want to put a pin in because I want to bring back why is that card seeing play again. You have Along Came Zeus, which is pretty much in most decks these days, or at least steel decks. I Find Them, I'll Flatten Them, another tech card for the current set 7 meta, and then A Whole New World. But again, no set 7 cards in this list. It topped $3,000 Sunday or $3,000 Sunday tournament at CCS. Yeah, this list is just so strong. John, I think you've spent a lot of time playing Amber Steel Song. So like why what's so core about this and why is this doesn't even need set 7 cards to win?
So functionally, you're singing a song on turn 2 almost every game. But that's really what you're looking at here. The Queen Shift line was kind of brought back to the deck recently. We'd been on Robin Hood Shift for a couple sets. Towards the end of last set, I think it was Kurt Spice came out with a list that was Queen Shift line using the World's Greatest Criminal Mind as an additional piece of removal off the Queen's ability, and it's worked really well in the last few months of meta. This
John,
type
before we
of
jump on
core
that, why
list.
does that work? Just for those that maybe aren't as familiar with how that works, like why is Queen and World's Greatest Criminal Mind like work together?
So if you quest with Queen, you can raise the attack of a character by 4 and negate the attack of another character by 4. And the raise of the attack does not have to be one of your own characters. So you can use it to target an opponent's character, take their bell, for example, and make it a 7/3 out of nowhere, and then the World's Greatest Criminal Mind banishes anything with over a 5 attack, or 5 attack or greater. So
Yeah, or
it
that
really
pesky
allows you to hit
Hiram.
everything. It does kill Hiram, which is phenomenal.
It's so beautiful.
Yep.
And what do you
It's a
think
good
caused
interaction.
the push to go with the 2 drop or like the Queen Shift line over the Robin Hood Shift line? It's not just World's Greatest Criminal. What else changed about set 7 meta that kind of positioned Queen as a good include? Because I actually don't see Robin Hoods anywhere anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't necessarily agree that the Queen Shift line's the right answer in the meta. I do see that this deck performed well, but in a meta where you're running around with turn 1 3/3s, the Queen gets to turn sideways 1 time. I'd rather have more Ursulas in the deck and run the Robin Hood Shift line myself. Or a better version that's come out recently is to run no shift lines. Personally, I think the Queen Shift line, this is probably just an incredibly good pilot that has a lot of experience with the deck. I think that's what that comes down to. Is not necessarily the correct choice for the cards for the set, but a good player piloting the deck.
Andy or Justin, any thoughts around Queen versus Robin Hood versus no shift line in this Amber Steel Song deck?
Yeah, maybe the reason for Queen there is that you can't coil and then little Sisu it, whereas the Robin you could, but that's like the only fringe case I see there. So maybe he's mulliganing super hard for a whole new world on 2 to destroy like whatever they set up in their mulligan. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with John on that one.
Yeah. Justin, you hit on a good point, which is where my head was at, is that when Queen was in the deck before, it was really strong because you could hold New World on turn 2 prior to the decks being able to set up some of their ramp, especially the Sapphire decks. And so just being able to whole New World earlier definitely could be a use case. But Andy, what is your take here on this build specifically using the Queen Shift line over Robin Hood?
I think it also the Queen ability helps like trade the board really well. So I think, using your Daisy Ducks, your Cinderellas, minusing something on their board, all those pesky bells, and empowering your Cinderella to take out a bell without it getting removed. I think it's a steel meta before red blue started coming back, but so I think the queenship was to like skew towards the steel matchups and knock them out. So I think it's just more like border control. in the steel matchup, whoever has the more characters usually ends up winning the game.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And just like you said, being able to get +4 strength, -4 strength, and change the trait, like change the board state in a very swing way. Matches are so tight these days, especially when you're not just playing against the Sapphire decks, where if you're able to do that, where you get to keep your character, take out their character without having to sing a damage song, like that could be a huge tempo swing, or even be able to surprise trade in, like think about like a 4/3 Fox, being able to -4/3 on the Fox, trade in, take that out when you thought, you could take out the Daisy. Like there's a lot of different scenarios here that I think are interesting that actually will come back up later in today's discussion. So stick around for that as to why a certain deck includes a certain card from set 7 that I think actually really changes things in a swingy way. But we'll save that for the end because we're going to talk about that deck a lot. But this was the traditional build. I do think, as you mentioned, John, there is another build that is leaning into less shift lines, I believe, but also is including a new card, which is the Troubadour. So Troubadour is a 2-drop inkable 1/3, resist +1, singer 4. If you've watched our set 7 metas review, the card review, we did discuss this card and we were comparing it to the Vanessa Ursula. So that's the 2-drop inkable 1/4 singer 4. But this card's been seeing a lot of play recently in these Steel Song lists. Even though I think when we discussed, we were kind of 50-50 on this card as to whether it was better than Vanessa or not. So again, John, I'll kick it to you first. Like, why is this card now maybe seeing a lot more play in the current set 7 meta when at the beginning we thought maybe the 1/4 Vanessa would actually stay in the deck?
I think this comes down to a personal choice, right? We discussed it quite a bit where it is almost a coin flip, but the Ursula does allow you to swing into something like a Bell and draw 3 cards. People are making the choice here because there are some things out there that only have one strength to them, and you can swing in and get a better trade. Could take no damage back. Resist is always good in that scenario. So it's going to be more of a local meta call based off of what you're seeing. If you're seeing a lot of the blue steel, I'd still do the Vanessa. But if you're seeing a lot of like little aggro decks that are trying to deal with the red blue, the Troubadour might be a good call into that.
Yeah, I think one thing I recall, and then I'll kick it to you, Andy, for your thoughts here, was because the 1/4 can take 3 damage and then you can Rapunzel it, whereas this card can't, right? Like the max it would probably have on it is 2. So you can Rapunzel for 2, but even getting 2 on it sometimes awkward in this meta. And so you kind of lose out on that 1/4 Rapunzel trap that you can set. But yeah, Andy, what's your thoughts on the Troubadour? Is there any rationale here as to why, or is it truly just a meta choice?
I think it's the steel meta, the songs. So like Storm, Rage, they get reduced by 1. Although, so it makes the math a little different. It takes 3 storms to get rid of this Troubadour. I don't see anyone ever doing that, but and it takes 2 to take out Ursula. So it makes the math a little different. So I think with steel, with like a steel meta, it's seen play because, like I said, I feel like I skew towards steel right now just because red blue it's coming back, but it's not as dominant as the steel meta is going to be. So that's why I think it's being
Yeah.
played right now.
I think into the same thing, not just thinking about the songs or the damage cards, but also characters. Like a lot of characters are quite small nowadays. I know we said Belle and a few others, but there is a lot of like smaller characters at the 2 cost or 2 strength to be able to trade in. So it takes a lot more to be able to do that. So you can't really trade efficiently into this card.
Mhm.
So it does protect it. But Justin, any thoughts from your angle as to why Troubadour is over Vanessa, or are you kind of with John where maybe Vanessa's better, but maybe it's just a coin flip?
I'm actually behind the Troubadour. I think there's a lot of scenarios where you have like a 1/2 on the board, room or Tipo, and then a bell behind it. And there's a lot of scenarios where those cards are played in many different color combination decks, and those don't kill this if they swing into it. And I'm not probably as well versed as John is on Steel Song, but I think you just want your characters to live a lot of the time. and drawing the one less card may not be super impactful since you've also have access to Whole New World. And then also the ally enables Bianca a little bit easier too.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point.
That
And
is a good
that's
point.
kind of the true difference I've seen actually. I don't have Bianca on this slide, but Bianca is the 6-drop inkable 5/5. But if you have an ally in play, you can cast Bianca for 4. And so I do think that's the versions I've seen where definitely Troubadour makes sense because it adds one more ally to the board over Vanessa not being an ally. So we'll talk about Bianca a little bit more in just a minute. But another card that's seeing play in some of the Steel Song list is Gantu. And we've spent a lot of time talking about Gantu, but Gantu is the 4-drop uninkable 2/4. When you play this character, characters can't exert to sing songs until the start of your next turn. Each player pays 2 additional ink to play actions or items. Now, clearly this is in to punish the Sapphire decks. I also think it's kind of funny because you can't sing songs or play songs for cheap. I guess you can sing songs on your next turn, but your songs also cost more, which is interesting. But maybe if you're just singing, it doesn't matter. But this is in the deck that we were going to share. And so this is kind of the new list that came out. It actually ended up winning the Ink Invitational 3K a few weeks ago. So this is still a very traditional Steel Song list, but we do see the Troubadour. We also see Bianca. We see Gantu. We see the Big Cinderella. But then, the namesakes. You see World's Greatest Criminal. Along Came Zeus. Let the Storm Rage on. But there is another card, and John, I'm going to let you explain this card. Neverland. What's going on with Neverland? Why is this card is like a 1-cost location throwaway?
Yeah, it's not exactly a throwaway. So you throw this guy down and your opponent has to turn sideways to deal with it. Which, in a deck like this, what you're looking to have happen most of the time is your opponent turns sideways, you swing into their whatever it is that they have turned sideways, and then heal with Rapunzel. There's a lot of play and counterplay when you're playing Steel Song or playing into Steel Song about making sure that the Steel Song player does not get that Rapunzel value. Neverland's going to force that Rapunzel value.
Yeah, so it really sets it up so when the boards are kind of at these stalemates, you're still gaining lore, where traditionally you're not if you have a 0/4, like if you're playing Nala instead of Neverland. Is that correct, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think people would look at this and be like, why not play Nala? A lot of decks are playing Nala, which is a 1-drop inkable 0/4 quest for 1. But being able to gain lore without questing really is helpful in these kind of like steel standoffs, as we often see in this meta.
It's really important to have a way to break that standoff, and Neverland breaks that standoff in a very innocent way.
This one also is showing no shift lines.
No shift lines.
Yep, I definitely like that version where we've gone to the deck and we've kind of gone away from shift lines as a whole. It definitely feels stronger. It feels more consistent. You're not hunting for your shift line in your opening hand. Instead, you're hunting for cards to interact with your opponent correctly. It allows you to mulligan in a different fashion, and the mulligans feel a lot better.
It also lets you empty your hand faster because you can just, before you Whole New World, you want to empty up your hand. That's how you gain advantage with this deck. A lot of people like to Whole New World on 4 after they play their aerial, but I think it's usually wrong. You want to wait until you can empty out your hand, turn 4, play 2 drops, 2 Smees, a Troubadour Smee, and then the following turn you're probably at 2 or 3 cards, ink, have that Whole New World bound by that aerial, and then replenish that hand and like unload on the board, especially in a steel meta.
Yeah, one thing I see is interesting too with that is you get to kind of play the aggro version, which is the next version we're going to look at for the first half of the game. Then you Whole New World and then kind of like set the stage and control them with your songs and whatnot and refill. In similar fashion that the aggro version plays Dock to kind of do that. In this case, you're playing Whole New World to do that, which obviously gives you much more cards, but you still have that early questing advantage that kind of puts you ahead while also being able to sing a bunch of songs. So I think you're absolutely right, Andy. Like singing on 2, 3, or 4 maybe isn't the right play, or maybe it is a turn 5 type situation. It does put you at risk with the Sapphire decks, though. And Justin, I know you've been playing more Sapphire Steel recently. And I just feel like turn 4 or 5 Whole New World against the Sapphire deck is like really bad, like in a disadvantaged way. Have you seen that? Or when someone's casting Whole New World against you, are you like, great, now I can actually,
No.
refuel?
Timing to it.
Yeah, you got to be. It is tricky because like, kind of like, do I hire him or do I not hire him? I'm like, do I draw the cards or do I just build up my board, right? So you kind of want to go wide, but you get to a point where you kind of have to just do it. And you have to just draw the cards, and then they hit you with it. So it's tricky for sure.
And how do you decide when to Whole New World? John, you've like shaking your head. I feel like you want to jump in here. Like, it is a tricky thing, and I think some people avoid playing this card because they're like, I don't know when to do it. Like, it's complicated. It feels really hard. Like, and it is, but yeah, help us understand.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. You wait until they're down to their last couple cards. With especially the blue steel builds that we're dealing with, or with red blue, you're going to be looking at a Tamatoa and maybe a dime in their hand for their last couple cards, right? And what they're trying to do is go ahead and play that Tamatoa, pull back a couple popsicles, and draw some cards. When they get down to that last couple cards, you Whole New World right then, and they're dropping out the value cards that actually make the deck work. They've been doing this draw engine thing up to that point in that game, and you do that, you take back the advantage in the game pretty aggressively. It is true, yeah, sure, they could hit one off of that Whole New World, but you're going to hit the removal. So they're going to be pulling back draw engine stuff, and then you're going to have a Zeus to deal with the crab when it comes down. Seems like a good deal.
You also go wide. You start going wider than them faster. They're not playing grab your swords. You're not gonna get punished. A lot of red blue decks aren't playing be prepared. They're playing one ofs. And I would take that chance. Just go wide. If they have it, they have it. But if not, you just win.
Yeah, I do think that's how it feels sometimes, where if you cast the Whole New World in the right spot, you definitely just win the game. And other times, like happened to me at DLC Atlanta, is I Whole New Worlded into 4 flutes in a row, which was not a good thing back in the day. Ended up losing that game to Green Steel when it was such a good matchup. But hey, it happens. You're playing a card that draws you 7 cards. You can miss some days. It is what it is. I do have an affinity for the Whole New World card. And for those that don't know, when World Championships come up, there's going to be a full art promo Whole New World, which looks incredible. Like,
Could be a lot.
I thought the Rapunzel was top notch, which I still think the Rapunzel is my favorite full art card. But that Whole New World looks sick.
So nice. So nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the money to buy it off of the people who are going to get it.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so
And there's
either.
only going to be a handful of them in the world, so I can't imagine
So
what the
what's
cost
gonna
is going to be on that thing.
what's gonna happen is we're gonna qualify through the LCQ worlds, right? Right, John?
Yeah, if they make that an option. Right now we got 28 qualified players, so there's
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
an even tournament, we need 4 more filled slots.
It
Yep.
does feel like there's 4 empty slots there, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. My prediction is that they're going to award them to other international players in some capacity,
Probably.
whether it's, in China or Japan or somehow in South America, or just try to balance it out a little bit more
Yeah,
in some way.
that makes sense.
Or maybe they'll just let like 4 like Ravensburger developers play or something like that.
DeCandio's gonna be there.
It'll be
The
Dikenio's
Candy.
backdoor to Worlds. Dikenio, we love you. You don't need a backdoor, but sometimes it's helpful. Well, these are the Steel Song lists. You've talked a lot about Whole New World. That's kind of the key of these decks. One thing we wanted to do on these is take a break with these first 2 decks and really look at the win percentage of the Steel Song decks. So what we're looking at right now, if you're just listening to the audio only, is inkdex.com provides a win matrix summary for all the decks. So it kind of summarizes all the data that they have access to. It's not completely full, comprehensive, but it's probably the most comprehensive data set that we have available publicly. They analyze all that, they look at the matchups, and they provide this win rate matrix. And so right now we're looking at the Steel Song specific, because we're going to look at the other Amber Steel decks separately, the aggro versions. But Steel Song doesn't look to be performing that well. Their overall win percentage is 46%. Red Blue has always been a challenge for Steel Song at 26%. The items decks are sub 50%, or the Steel Song decks are sub 50%. I guess against Amethyst Steel, it does well. Steel Song is a 50-50. And then Emerald Steel is
dismal.
at 33%. And then I think if you look at even further down the chart, it gets a little better with Ruby Amethyst and a few other things. It actually does quite well into the other Amber Steel decks. So if the other Amber Steel decks start coming back, bringing this Amber Steel might be good. But when you just look at this, like, doesn't look like a good choice for right now. John, what's your take on this since you're more kind of like in tune with the data points?
So this is kind of what I was talking about when we were doing the initial set review where I said Steel Song was dead for the set. The fact that we have the Bell items package and the Scrooge and the Crab make it incredibly difficult for Steel Song to keep cards in play and maintain a value generation. Unfortunately, these blue items and blue aggro, they have this same core idea of what Steel Song's doing. They're running Strength, they're running Storm, and they're running their version of a Cindy, which is 3/3. It's just strictly better, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, any thoughts on Steel Song, or maybe is there hope for Steel Song if for some reason we pivot towards maybe a more aggressive meta? Because Steel Song does really well against the aggressive decks, but outside of that,
It's possible with people trying to target red blue, but I think there's still going to be red blue until it's not there. And when if you get into the top cut, then you're going to run into red blue, which has always been a bad matchup there. And if you look at the last 2 weeks, the win percentages actually have gotten even worse for all these matchups except for the aggro blue steel build. It went from 49 to 52%. So it's actually a winning match now there. So it's a positive for
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I guess too, again, like metas aren't all created equal. And even though Ruby Sapphire is running around kind of at the national stages and some of these bigger tournaments, if your meta is leaning more aggressive and more aggro lower to the ground, Steel Song might actually be a great fit for you as you're looking at set 7. So again, you have to take into consideration, yes, what we're saying about the broader meta, but then again, what is your local meta? What does that feel like? And again, if you're seeing a bunch of Amethyst Steel decks, if you see maybe the Steel Sapphire Steel aggro decks, or if you see the more aggro Amber Steel decks, or the Chernadog list percentages here seem really low, but I feel like this deck has to do well into that deck, but I could be wrong. No, it doesn't, John.
No, so unfortunately, the Churabog is incredibly difficult for that deck to deal with. You have to have the world's greatest criminal to get your 1-for-1. And the way that they're able to reload and keep adding pressure from the discard is more than what Steel Song can handle, unfortunately.
Yeah, so if you have your traditional, maybe steel-based aggro decks, whether it's Emerald, Amethyst, or not Emerald, whether it's Amethyst, Amber, or Sapphire Steel, this deck might be a great choice for you. But let's move along. We're not going to focus all on the Steel Song variant, because one thing that we have seen is the emergence of a more aggro version. And again, we talked about Brendan DeCandio earlier on this podcast. Now that he's with Ravensburger as a developer, I believe. But prior to that, he really helped create a more aggro version and kind of set the stage for that by using Doc. But there are a few other cards now that people are trying out, especially from set 7, in the form of Bianca, as we mentioned, but also Bolt. Bolt is a fun card. Superdog. Who wouldn't want to play a card called Superdog? This lower to the ground, quicker, more aggro-driven deck. If you don't know what Bolt does, he's a 5-drop inkable, 3/5, shift 3. His ability Mark of Power says whenever you're ready, this character gain 1 lore for each other undamaged character you have in play. And you can Bolt Stare. I sometimes forget that these abilities have names. They are very creative. You
They
know,
are.
Bolt Stare. Like just
The
give them the stare
enchanted,
down and get those illusions out of
the
here.
enchanted works with that name perfectly.
That's true. The
The bolts
enchanted
there.
Bolt art. Yeah, definitely crushes.
Beautiful.
Quest for 2, pretty good card in multiplayer. Andy and I lost to this card in multiplayer, but we won't talk about that. Yeah. And so one thing we're seeing is these two cards coming together and kind of forming this Bolt Songs deck. I guess this one still has Whole New World in it. I actually missed Whole New World in this one, but it's like a shift Bolt kind of, aggro-ish deck that's, pretty neat. I really like this deck. I want to play Bolt all day long. Bolt seems like a fun way to not play Sapphire for a weekend.
Yeah.
Be accurate.
Justin, have
this
you ever
one's
piloted Bolt?
I've tried just a little bit, and it always didn't. It always felt underwhelming. But I guess if you're just gaining like the 2 lore, it's still perhaps just sufficient to be enough.
Sven's nice. I like you can activate the ability right away, right? Because it's not the start of your turn, it's just when he readies.
Yep, that's when he readies.
I didn't even think about that. So what Andy just said is when you play Sven, the 4-drop Inkable, you can ready a character of yours. But if you ready Bolt ability triggers, and so you gain the lore right away. So you don't have to wait till the next turn. That is a powerful combo.
Yeah, it helps with those stalemates that we talked about in Steel. You can still be gaining lore while they're, just holding their cards. Hopefully you have 2, 3 characters, other characters with no damage, and you gain 3 lore, which is Sven. Kind of nice.
Yeah. And if you're really crafty, you can quest with Bolt, play Sven, untap Bolt, gain lore, and then you can tap it to kill Cobra.
That's a bit excessive.
Well,
But yeah, no, I did see
Hey,
this
it's called
deck a few times.
win more strategy, John. That's the type of deck I like.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, red-blue player. Yep, that checks out.
but if you untap with Sven, you can't quest or challenge though.
Yeah, but you can tap the
You
ability
can't,
on
but you
Bolt.
can tap it to banish illusions.
You could sing.
So
No,
the really
it's one of its abilities is tap, banish target,
Yeah,
banish chosen illusion.
I forgot it had that.
And like, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
nice.
So one thing I did see this weekend was somebody had Bolt in play. Now they were running a deck. It might have been this 60 even. It was very close to this, if not this. And they were sitting right next to me. They had the Bolt in play for a turn, and they had I think it was Bianca in play as well. They quested with Bolt, gained their 2, played the Sven, untapped that Bolt, played a Zeus, I believe it was, gained their lore because it had untapped. With Sven, that was the 3 lore, so it was 5 lore in that one turn, and then quested with Bianca for the 6th lore and just won the game after it had been like a close trading game this whole time, and they're at 14 to lethal in one turn. Kind of wild in this type of deck if you don't have a wide board.
Pretty nice.
It's Amber Steel's way of gaining lore on demand and to combat those Amethyst decks that have been doing it so long, where they're like bounce, 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 whatever. They're like, no, untap my Bolt.
Yep.
We're trying
It also
things. We're
protects
trying
it for an
things.
extra turn.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think too, then if you do that on one turn and then the next turn you're able to do it all over again in some ways, or at least quest again, like that's extremely powerful. Yeah. 2 triggers off Bolt would be huge if you got 2.
You're going to
triggers
win
off
the
Bolt.
game if you get 2 triggers off Bolt.
You gain lore from Sven too, right? Because he's in play.
Yes.
Okay.
He's in play, he's undamaged.
Okay. Cool.
Very interesting
nice.
deck.
Andy's gears are turning.
You got to play those enchanted bolts, Andy. This might
Oh
give
yeah,
you
I gotta get
justification.
them.
Yeah.
But it's
Like a
worth
specie
it.
move
You
in
get
the
to bolt
market.
stare down a Cobra. Tell
That's
that
true.
Cobra to
That's
go.
true.
And who knows, Bolt might be amazing when the next set comes out with all the illusions running around.
That's true. With Jafar.
Sell the tramp that I sold you for $90 and get the
Yep.
Bolt.
I'm never selling that card. I love that art. I think that card's gonna be so good when if a rotation or ban happens.
But yeah, if rotation happens, that 2-drop tramp is going to be a menace.
I want to get 3 more.
Well, enough about dogs. We got to move on to the next deck and so that we can get to our altering sessions with the Amber Steel decks. But the last deck we're going to look at is an interesting take. It actually topped both of the tournaments this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona, both the 5K and the 1.5K. And it not all focused on this card, but it include this card from set 7, which I don't think was on everyone's radar. It's incredible and limited, but I didn't think it was going to make constructed play fully. But again, just an incredible card in Penny. Andy, why do we think this card is incredible? You played against this deck. Did you play against this deck this weekend? Or who played against this deck this weekend?
I did not play against this deck. I wanted to play
Justin?
against this deck.
My wife played this card.
Okay, so Justin, what happened? What did they do with this card?
Oh, she actually forgot one game, and I wasn't going to remind her either. It was cutthroat. She didn't give her guy resist. She was just focusing on the healing the damage. But then she started remembering it. It's just nice because you can keep your Smee from taking damage at the end of turn, and it lasts all the way into your next turn. So it kind of has a little bit of a Cogsworth type effect where you can now your 3/3s don't get traded by their 3/3s. So that's nice. And a quest for 2. I mean, it's early, right? Put it down. And if maybe they have like Chernobog followers on the board, right? And you have Piglet play this, the Chernobog followers isn't going to kill it. Could get foxed, right? Still could get crabbed, still, but it's I think it's a really nice card. It's certainly fun, and it looks great in foil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
It's
this
kind of one of
card.
those cards. And shout out to the Dave who we're going to show his deck list here, colored Tower Offense. So the Dave, who is a Quest Like a Pro alum, you can check out his episode in the archives where he unpacks just how he thinks about playing. But the Dave took down the K with this Tower Defense Amber Steel deck with Penny. And one thing the Dave said about Penny was that it has everything you want. It costs 2, so it's low cost. It's inkable. It has like multiple use cases. It gives resist +1 and heals 2 damage if you want to, or heals 2 damage, whatever you want to do, which sometimes I forget she even does the heal damage. That's the one I always forget. And she quests for 2, and she's a 1/2, so she doesn't even die to like these random 1/1s. Like this card has the full package. And the thing I didn't think about, but the more I've played this deck, and before I get nods from people that are just listening to audio only or kind of negative comments, I am going to explain the deck, but let me talk about Penny one more time before we do that. Is you can play this down when they play their Fox thinking that they can't get Rapunzel value. So if they play like Calhoun on turn 3, you quest in to basically trap them with your 1/4. They challenge back, or you quest in with like a 2-drop. They quest in with their Calhoun, and then they bounce Calhoun, put Fox in play. They think now you can't trade back or basically challenge back in with your Daisy Duck to get Rapunzel value. But if you play Penny too and Rapunzel, you can, which I did the other day, and it was very powerful. And so I was able to draw 3 cards by challenging a Daisy Duck into a Fox. Not
Very
as
nice.
common, but I was like, that's pretty sick. You know,
It is.
That's broken.
don't see it coming. Don't see it coming.
So good.
You're supposed to
Which
be
is pretty
safe
awesome.
with a 4-strength character on the board, and you do that shenanigan.
You're never safe.
Get out of here.
You're never
Purple-
safe against this deck. I also think too, like if they have Scrooge McDuck in play or any of these 4 costs, you're absolutely right. Like people think they're fine unless you have another Rapunzel in play, but they're not, because you can play Penny plus Rapunzel and it becomes really interesting. You have to have 6 ink, which it's not very common, but so it goes.
I really think that's what this deck did better than anything this weekend, is catch people off guard, because everyone is trained that if you're at 4 strength, you're safe. I was watching a lot of Dave's games because, he's Dave. I would just watch. A lot of times he would drop their tower and move a character, swing across, and then have that damage to pull off with Rapunzel. Right? Like, it's just a random 3 health on any given character at any given time.
Yeah, so just for the audio only listeners, this deck is very similar to the Diggy Diggy Hole deck that Brendan DeCandio helped mint. It plays Happy and Doc and a bunch of low to the ground characters, Lawrence, Benja. Now it plays Penny. It plays the Dwarf's Mine, which was a really powerful card. That's a 2-drop inkable location. That's a 6 health. You gain 1 lore, but if you move a character there, it deals 1 damage. If you move a knight there, it does 2 damage. Very powerful, really great. But the new card in this deck is not only Penny, but it plays Rapunzel's Tower. Now, Rapunzel's Tower, similar to Neverland, is a throwaway card until you play it. And then you're like, this is not a throwaway card. This card is insane. It's a 2-drop inkable 1/8. So it costs 1 to move there. And when you move a character there, they get +3 strength, which really empowers what you were saying, John, for those listening, which is you can move characters there. They get +3 strength. So they have huge defense. And so Rapunzel value is very easy to get if anyone quests or does anything really. Yeah.
+3 willpower.
+3 willpower, not defense. Willpower.
Yes, willpower.
The will
think, yeah.
the will to live.
We knew
Just
what we
more
were talking
traps.
about.
Basically more traps for Rapunzel.
Yep.
That's
But that's all this deck is a giant Rapunzel trap.
it's just a trap, and you have to. It's I think it's easy to play around. I think if you play against it a lot, you get like if you play purple at least, you have an idea of how to like get rid of most of the characters by getting rid of the tower and not exposing yourself to a Rapunzel. But I think a lot of people were surprised by that card, and they forgot about the resist with Penny, Rapunzel's tower, and made mistakes against this deck that cost them into a Rapunzel trap. And I think that's why it works so well. And it's still a strong deck. It goes fast, that's for sure.
It's a strong deck, but I don't think it's going to perform the same way it did going forward. Just because there's a lot of surprises in the deck that if you haven't seen it before are going to catch you off guard, and you are going to make mistakes into it that you just simply because you don't know or understand that those are options for mistakes to be made.
I think it was a good meta call.
Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they tackled the meta correctly. They saw steal and they're like, how can we just make our cards harder for them to kill? And they added one card, and it worked.
Yeah, we should have saw this coming. It's called Rapunzel's Tower. Like, you should obviously have this in the
It's
deck
right
with
there.
Rapunzel.
Checks out.
What's the subtext on the Rapunzel's Tower? It's or the sub name? It's like something prison. The secluded prison.
A secluded prison.
It even sounds
Yeah,
scary.
secluded prison. Yeah.
It's a scary world out there by Mother Gothel.
Justin, what's your take on this deck? Have you thought about piloting this deck?
Yeah,
or
I
have
kind of.
you took it for a spin?
Yeah, absolutely. I helped my wife put this together before they brought it this weekend, and I haven't quite figured out mine. I don't like to play happy as well, so I just had her on the Rapunzel's Tower. No mine, no happy. I think we ended up running Sven and something else, maybe Piglet, which dies to a lot of steals, gets wrecked by steel, but can be really good in certain spots. Yeah, I mean the Rapunzel's Tower is super good when you can you can draw 3 cards off of Benja, for example. And you're like, wait, that's not supposed to be possible.
Yeah,
It's so
I think
good.
so when I talked to Talman Purple, he was saying that they originally had Neverland instead of Happy. So they were actually playing 4 Neverlands. So they were playing 12 locations, not Happy, which I think is interesting. And I think, again, we talked about the power of Neverland. But then they put Happy back in, really, I think, because the potential for Diablo to be more at play, given the the rise back of the resurrection. I don't know what we're talking about. Anyways, the
resurgence.
return of the Amethyst Emerald deck, which is playing a lot of evasive characters. And so I think they wanted to include Happy again instead of Neverland. But again, if maybe you don't have a strong Emerald meta and you're not afraid of Diablo sitting across from you, you could put Neverlands back in. You could try a few different cards. I think there's a lot of variants that you could play here and have a really good time. And John, I think to your point, and Andy, I think you touched on this too, like if your meta hasn't locally seen this, I think it actually is a really, really interesting play. Or if you're just like literally in a sea of Sapphire Steel, like this deck crushes Sapphire Steel. Like it's really bad day for Sapphire Steel to play against this deck, all the versions. So again, if you just have a bunch of punks playing Sapphire Steel and they're like, you can't beat us, roll up with a Rapunzel's Tower and put them in their place. So it could be a fun weekend.
Yeah, it's a fun deck too. So you have a great time.
Yeah. Well, let's transition to the win percentages of the aggro decks. Obviously, this isn't exclusive to this list, the Rapunzel's Tower list, but it's just kind of a broader look at the aggro decks with the Dwarf's Mine deck. One thing that stood out to me right away, and I would love your all's feedback, is it actually is really good into most decks, except for Ruby Sapphire a little bit. Ruby Sapphire is a little rough, at least according to these, but over 50% overall, again, does really well into the other steel decks.
Yeah, that was part of the reason a bunch of us took this for last chance qualifiers and for nationals. Dave was on this for nationals. There's like 5 or 6 of us in total that took it, and 2 players made it from LCCs into nationals that were on this. It is just because it does generically have good matchups into most of the format, and if you're playing into somebody's deck and it stumbles even in the slightest, you're going to win the match. They miss one turn, you win.
Yeah,
Not many
it's very
decks are
strong.
that aggressive while still being stable.
That's true.
So we've looked at Amber Steel. Amber Steel, I think, is back on the rise. I think it's showing again that it can be a top tier deck. Again, maybe not tier 0 or tier S or S tier, whatever you want to refer to it as, which S tier obviously just stands for Sapphire tier. I don't know if anyone knows
Apparently.
that,
Sadly.
but like it's exclusively for Sapphire. It sits above all the other tiers. Sapphire is still really strong, but again, this deck, especially the aggro version, has a lot of game into some of the Sapphire Steel decks. I'll be curious to see how it can evolve to play into Ruby Sapphire, if that continues to reign as we talked about previously. But overall, I think it's a really fun deck, and I would love to spend some time with you all doing some altering with this tower deck to see how it kind of works. You all ready?
Sounds good.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the Rapunzel's tower deck, pretty strong deck. We're just going to dive in and do some altering. So let's simulate a hand here. As always, we're going to treat this like a game show. I'm going to call on one of our crew members, Andy, John, or Justin. We're going to give them a scenario, and then we're going to judge them deeply on their
I love
alter
being
decisions.
judged.
So
Brutal.
let's dive into this. Hey, it's like a friendly judging and hazing. Ultimately, always for the betterment of our players to help them level up. So, Andy, speaking of judging, we're going to put you in the judged seat right now. And you are currently playing against Ruby Sapphire, and you are on the play.
On the play.
John's holding his
At least
head
you won the
like
die
you
roll.
already lost
I
the
feel like I
game
lose.
because
I think I just lose.
it doesn't even matter what's in your hand.
I feel like I just lose.
But right now we have Benja, Cinderella, Strength of Raging Fire, Benja, Dwarf's Mine, Penny, our favorite dog walker, and 7 Dwarf's Mine.
Okay. So I want to send back the strength, the mines, and Penny for sure, and a Benja. And I think I keep a Benja to hit a coil or to hit a popsicle just to kind of prevent them from drawing. And also quest for 2. We always want to hit a 1-drop, preferably Daisy. But I think as long as we have a 1-drop, if we hit a Daisy into our mulligan, we can ink Cinderella because it doesn't really do much for us in this matchup. And we're not trying to sing songs on turn 2 against this matchup because they're just trying to ramp. The best thing we can hit on turn 2 after they ramp or turn 3 after they ramp is a Tipo, and that's not going to do anything. We need every lore we can get. So I'm doing this, keeping Cinderella and Benja.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I think is underrated is keeping cards that you don't want to draw later, if you can. So yes, you can play it turn 1 if you have to, but you can also ink it because you definitely don't want to draw it later, which is an underappreciated strategy, I think, when you're altering.
Yeah. Some cards are just automatic ink. If you find the card you really want.
Absolutely. John, what do you think of Andy's decision? And then Justin.
What version of Red Blue are we playing into?
You're playing into the like dime version, so not the shark version, or maybe it has shark, but you're playing into like the more items heavy version.
So the more items heavy version that's only running like 2 or 3 of the Maui heroes.
Likely, yes. Yeah, it's definitely not running a 4-pack of the hero.
They always have the Maui though, John.
They always
have
have the Maui. I'm like, I always have Maui.
So I don't.
You've definitely forced them to have it though, because
You
the
have
only
to.
thing that you're worried about with the mine in play is the Maui, and it's going to survive a lot more of what they're doing. So if I'm mulliganing this, I'm gonna stick with that Cinderella just because it's a guaranteed 1-drop. I'm gonna keep one of the mines, and I'm gonna keep a Benja so we can hit the item before Hiram banishes it.
Yep.
But I do want that mine in my hand. If they play a turn 1 bell, if they're on that really heavy version and they play the turn 1 bell, we're going to go and ink the mine. But if they're not, they don't have that big hit, they just popsicle pass. That mine on 2 is really good.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
I think what I'm searching for right now is obviously a Daisy and a Smee. I want a better
Mhm.
2-draw. So because they're not going to answer the Smee until the Smee quest for 4.
This is while that is true, you can't guarantee it. And if you throw away your mine, which is your next best option on 2, and you don't get anything back, you're really gonna lose that game.
Is there any thought process here, just using the same thought process, John, and maybe playing mine on 2 is better if they don't play Bell? But like in the same light, if we need to play a 2-drop in this form, like is there any case we just keep Penny and like slam Penny if they don't play Bell as well? And we can quest for 2 for at least 2 turns. It's getting us 4 instead of
I guess
mine getting us
C-suits.
maybe 3.
You're probably not questing a single time with Penny.
I don't think so.
Yeah, Penny probably dies when she hits play.
You're going first though.
Okay, so you're going first. You might get 1 quest. But you'll get 1 quest, but that
Yeah.
little Sisu's gonna come down and eat Penny.
That little C-suit just destroys everything. That's why I think I need a Smee, not a mine.
Justin, any alternative takes here?
I'm closer to Noah. I mean, I think their deck eats everything you play. So what's the difference? Like, I think I'm just keeping Penny, sending everything back. I think if you know you're playing against red blue, we're trying to high roll our. If we miss our 1, then we've already kind of lost this game anyways. So like, why don't we just try and high roll and get the daisies?
That's why I would rather
Yeah.
mulligan more 5 cards.
Yeah.
But I'd go
To
just
find out
Penny.
daisy.
Well, I
send
think
everything
Justin's
back.
saying just keep Penny, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just saying do this.
Oh no, I keep the guaranteed ink.
Yeah.
You keep the guaranteed 1
It's
drop.
kind of like when we play purple steel. It's kind of like you're playing purple steel. That Cinderella's a broom. I mean, it doesn't draw a card, but
I'm just getting more to the point where like if I have a bad matchup or if I'm on the draw, I'm trying to high roll because it's like it is so close these days that like just taking the risk that way.
We're going to see
an
about
option.
Andy's mulligan. So Andy said he would keep Cinderella and Benja. We're going to mulligan here. So we do draw into our Smee. This hand's not terrible. We have Cinderella into Smee, into Benja. We plus have a song to take out something if we do hit it. We didn't get Daisy Duck, but we do have double Penny, which is fun because we could actually play Penny to hit Smee and then maybe take out their Bell or protect Smee from Bell, even if they play Bell on turn 3, which is really interesting. We could also just play Cinderella, Smee, Benja, Sing Strength to take out Bell, which is also pretty powerful. So I think there's a few lines here that are actually really good.
Like I would
Yeah.
ink Penny,
On the-
play Cinderella here.
Yeah. Yeah, on the play, you definitely just ink Penny and go, Cindy and go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that,
then-
Justin, you're up next. You have no idea what your opponent's playing, and you're
Okay.
on the draw.
I'm on the draw. All right.
This hand has Dwarf's Mine, Rapunzel's Tower, Double Strength, Daisy, Doc, Happy. So you got a lot of knights, a lot of locations, a lot of songs, and little old Daisy.
Probably. So I'm not keeping Doc because I've got more cards in my hand. I'm not doing that right now. So we can get rid of that one. I need board presence, so it's not either locations. I need to make sure that I've got enough down there. I'm thinking I'm not keeping both strengths. So I'm thinking I'm probably I'm leaning towards Daisy's strength, keep and then send everything else back. How many uninkables are in
Including
this?
Happy?
How many uninkables are in this?
16.
16.
Yeah, that's a big number.
It is.
Maybe we're keeping Happy.
I always keep happy.
Yeah, I'd probably
Yeah.
I keep Happy, Daisy, and Strength. It's probably gonna end up being Ink, but I'm good with that.
Okay. So Justin's saying he's going to keep Strength, Daisy, and Happy. We are on the draw blind. Andy.
I like the happy keep and the daisy. If I don't know what I'm playing, I mean, I guess we could always ink if it's emerald. I just want bodies, so I want to guarantee like a 2-drop. I feel like I send strength back because I don't have a singer. So I'm only keeping Daisy and Happy. I always keep Happy just because it's ink. I don't want to see it later. I don't want to top deck into a Happy at turn 6. I'd rather just guarantee my Daisy Duck, and every other card I'm most likely playing whatever we mulligan into.
Yeah. One quick take before John, you jump in here is there any case that you try to do like turn 1 Daisy, turn 2 mine? Again, if we're playing it against Sapphire, and then
Not on the draw.
or turn 3. I just like playing turn 3 Happy, put it in the mine, deal 2 damage. There's probably no
It
way
kills
we're doing
nothing.
that,
Played this-
but
It
kills
doesn't.
nothing.
You played
It's
that
too
line.
It
slow.
kills their
It's way too
TPO,
slow.
Justin. It kills their
It does
TPO.
kill their TPO. You're
Oh
right.
man, they lost the one.
No, I think we watched you play this line out earlier, and it did not work for
It
you.
definitely did not work. It definitely did not work.
He had 4 more characters. Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
John, what's your take here? What are we keeping?
No, I think Andy's 100% right. You keep just the Daisy and the Happy and ship everything else.
Okay. Well,
we
given that we're gonna keep all things fair, Justin, do you have any comments on that of why you would justify keeping the strength or no?
I feel like the deck doesn't have a hard time finding a singer for strength, and it's a chance to like break board parity. And so you just want to kind of guarantee you see it. You only have 8 songs, and the storm doesn't do anything. So you got to see those ones. You got to see strength.
Okay, well, let's say you keep strength like Justin decided. Let's see what we draw. We drew into Calhoun, Pete, Tower, and Lawrence. So we still have a 2-drop, which is great. So we have Daisy into Calhoun potentially. Let's say they play turn 1 Popsicle Bell. What are you doing, John? Or they ink
Ink the Happy, play the Daisy.
they ink Visions.
Ink the Happy. They ink. Yeah, still
So they ink Visions, play Popsicle,
Ink Visions.
Popsicle to play Bell.
Ink Rapunzel's Tower, play Daisy.
I think it's still always
Andy's
happening.
face and John's face just got wrinkly, so I think they disagree.
I just
John,
don't know that you're going to be able to gain Rapunzel's value off of red blue.
I kind of like the idea if they're playing Bell to get that Calhoun down on turn 2, and then turn 3 drop Tower, move Calhoun over, and kill the Bell. Odds are, like, yeah, ink the Happy, play Daisy, and then hopefully you don't have to ink Lawrence. But I do think it's worth the thought process to where you can swing across with a Calhoun on turn 3 to take out a Bell and keep it in play.
I can see that.
especially if they haven't seen Tower yet. So you're playing blind, so they don't know you're playing Tower. And again, to what we talked about, a lot of people won't expect Tower because they're like, what is this card? I thought it was Draft Bulk.
I mean, it could also be blue steel. Red blue is not the only one that plays Visions.
Yeah.
Now
I was
they're
gonna
playing
see.
it.
I
It's
was
pretty
gonna
new,
see.
though.
I chose Visions for a reason to see like what our take was and if that like took us down a rabbit trail. But yeah,
I would
I
just
played the
ink
board
Happy.
state.
It's more
Yeah.
common in red blue.
But Bell package is not more common.
No, but the Visions though.
True, but the package is bigger and it's more in blue steel. So like the
Yeah.
songs.
I don't know a Ruby Sapphire deck that's playing Bell.
There's a Ruby Sapphire items deck. Jonathan got second place with it at the 10 case tournament, and it's popped up a few times since then. They're running the big shift bell as well as the little bell.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
a
Jonathan
pretty-
Williams, right?
Yeah,
yes,
Jonathan Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played against that list at the
Yeah.
the Gamers Guild. I believe Jonathan as well was playing it there.
Yeah.
I
I think you can't
pretty
play that.
sure it does
I don't
not
think
play
you're allowed to
Visions.
play that deck unless you have enchanted shift bells. Like I just think it should be like
Requirement.
if you don't have them, you can't play it.
Sounds
'Cause
right.
that card comes in like the starter deck. So like okay, let's go to the next one. John, you're up. Let's see if we can give you an interesting scenario. You are actually playing against Amethyst Steel, and you are on the play.
Game over. It's game.
For who?
I don't love this. Amethyst Steel on the play. I'm probably keeping a Daisy, a Lawrence, a Rapunzel, and shipping out the rest of it.
So you have Daisy, Storm, Lawrence, Rapunzel, Doc, Strength. So you're saying you're keeping Daisy and you're keeping Rapunzel
And Lawrence.
and Lawrence. Okay, so Storm's going
Right.
back, Rapunzel's going back, Doc, and Strength.
So the idea of the game plan here is I want to find a 2-drop, but I want to force a weird parity state on the board where I start turning sideways. I'm not going to quest the Daisy on turn 1. I will play it, but I'm not questing with it.
Yep.
I want to
Can
create
you
a
explain
board
why?
state.
I think people, just in case people don't, so you play Daisy, but then you're not planning on questing with it. Why?
So the idea is that Purple Steel only has maybe 8 misses at maximum. Otherwise, you're feeding them cards, right? And in this game, into Purple Steel, it's all about who gets more cards in the long run. which is where the Rapunzel comes in so well. So I'm looking for Rapunzel's tower here on this throwback, and I'm looking for a 2-drop. I want to create a weird board state where I can turn Lawrence and Daisy sideways on the same turn and trap them into a Rapunzel on turn 4. That's ideally the game plan of what you're looking for here. You get that Rapunzel down, get 3 draws off of it, you're probably winning the game.
You could also force your draws by storming your own Lawrence or strengthening your own Lawrence.
You can go that route. It's not ideal. That's kind of a last resort style thing. If you draw back into it and that's what they offer you in the board state, you take it, but you don't try to plan into that if that makes sense.
Andy,
That makes
Justin,
sense.
any other thoughts here? You all both played a lot of Amethyst Steel, so you know the other side of this deck, or the other side of this matchup. You know, you're playing against this deck. What don't you want to see
This is
going second?
X-Force. You don't want to see X-Force. Like, and this is, I know you can kill it with a Fox. I know we've got Crab, but like, they just go wider, 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 and eventually they force you to take something out, and then you Rapunzel, and it's over. This game's over, right? This is already perfect.
Okay, no, it's not over. All
So just to be
right.
clear, Justin, you're saying it's over. You mean Amethyst Steel lost?
Yeah.
No,
If you're on the draw, maybe not.
if you're on the if the Amber Steel's on the draw,
If Hammer still's on the draw, maybe not.
Nah,
These
I think
cards, it looks
purple's-
like a pretty
Even then.
strong win chance here.
Yeah, it has 3 out of the 4 cards I look for in that matchup. So I'm pretty
Andy,
happy
bring us
with this.
down, ground us a little bit more. Why are you like protesting that it's over? What are we missing here?
it's not over. It's still like I feel like it's a 50-50, in my opinion. John did make some points. If you're playing this deck, do not quest into a purple deck. Do not get them their Crab. Do not get them their Fox. When anyone plays this deck against me and they quest with Daisy turn 2, I love it. I have 4 non-characters in my deck as Blurple and 4 in purple steel as well. And so I'm always most likely hitting a character. And that character is always Fox. I always show you my beautiful Fox.
If you're playing against a player, like, so John, to your point, like where it's like, okay, you know, you're playing against a player that's going to like make it difficult. Because, you know, let's say you've played them before or whatever, and you're like, okay, they're not going to give me an easy Rapunzel. They're not going to do something strange where like I get to do it. I'm going to have to fight for it. Is there any case you keep Doc here so that like you at least know you have a draw power like on turn 4 or 5 if drawing is like critical here, or you have to go the Rapunzel route here?
So you have too many unequables in the deck to hold on to the dock. You can end up in an awkward situation where you're playing a dock on turn 2 on purpose if you keep it, and that is definitely not something that leads to winning any sort of games.
Okay.
If you had a 2-drop here, you might be able to keep it.
Yeah, if you had a Smee, I would keep probably.
Yeah.
If Doc was a Smee, I'd keep maybe everything except for the Storm and the Rapunzel.
Yeah,
Rapunzel.
I think that's right. But that's if it was a SME. I think
Right,
that does
right.
change the calculation quite a lot.
Let's see what we get here. So we mulligan, and this hand got so much better for
it's
the
over.
Amber Steel deck.
Okay, it's not over.
It's over.
Andy's
That's
like,
a good
Andy's
hand.
like, let's shuffle up and play right now. You keep
All
this
right,
hand, and
we
I'll
can
play against you.
We can play
Yeah.
right now.
That's such a good
Just
hand.
for the audio only. So we drew Smee, Let the Storm Rage On, Calhoun, and Dwarf's Mind. So we got our 2-drop, and we have both options. So we have Calhoun or Smee. We have Lawrence again, Let the Storm Rage On, just in case we need to get our own value off of a Rapunzel. Yeah, this hand's pretty solid.
I'm gonna
Ink
quest
Mind.
twice with me, and you better have a 3/3 that dies to it. Otherwise, it's gonna draw 2 at least.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
that was a
think-
powerful hand. Well, this has been another fun rendition. For now, we're going to call it quits and go back to the Amber Steel deck. A summary. I think Amber Steel, let's do a little round robin to kind of just wrap this up. I really like the prospect of Amber Steel, especially the aggro decks, into the current meta because of its position against some of the other aggro decks and into the other steel decks, including Sapphire Steel. Obviously, you struggle with Ruby. a Sapphire, but again, you can still get under it if they misplay, you can still beat them. And so I think, and again, that deck's actually like really hard to play. I think you can also still get some value off the Rapunzel's Tower. I also don't think you necessarily need to play the Rapunzel Towers version. I think the original Diggy Diggy Hole could be really powerful as well. Obviously, this version is performing. But as we wrap, Justin, what's your take on Amber Steel in set 7?
It's the fast version feels fun, but feels really challenging in the red blue, just like everything else does though, because it just all of their stuff dies to theirs. So you're just hoping for steel matchup.
There are more steel decks than red blues, so I guess if you're playing odds, Andy.
I agree with Justin. I think the fast version feels really good right now against into the steel meta. But I always respect a steel song because it's a deck that it performed this past weekend top 4 and it won the ink invitational because if it high rolls, when it high rolls, and you just go really wide real quick and there's nothing they can do. There's no interaction. There's nothing. They just steamroll you and it feels terrible. But it could also just it has a lot of inkables as well, so like it could also clog your hand. You can get 3 whole new worlds, so it could also beat itself. But that's the risk you take if you want to play that type of deck. But yeah, so I respect both versions. I think they're great into this meta. I think it can be fast enough to get under red blue as well. And you just always have the card advantage with a whole new world.
Absolutely. One of our other alums, Pando, proved that at North American Lorcana Nationals and was able to make top 8, beating multiple Ruby Sapphire decks on the way. Yes, it was set 6 meta, but still got there against all odds. I think it was never a good matchup even in set 6, but you can definitely make it happen.
Yep.
John, close us out. What's your thoughts about Amber Steel?
I think Amber Steel's become a lot more difficult to play this set. In the past, Steel Song was one of the easiest decks to play in the game. The interactions that exist in the game now are a lot more complex, and you have to spend a lot more time thinking about what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. I think if you're looking to play this deck, make sure to get some reps in, make sure to understand your matchups and try different lines, try and see what works, what doesn't work. Go ahead and try that Dwarf's Mine on turn 2 and look at the results.
We
I will
learn from our
clarify,
mistakes.
Dwarf's Mine on turn 2 into an aggro steel deck. Don't do that. But as you said earlier, play mine on turn 2 against Sapphire deck when they don't play Bell. Feels really good.
Yep.
Well, that's it. We'll end here. We've covered a lot of steel decks. I think at the beginning of this, we said we've covered all of them except for Ruby Steel, which we probably won't cover. But let us know in the comments what the next deck you would like us to cover in the set 7 meta. As we mentioned, it's always evolving. So even though this is intended to be a primer on the deck and how the different dimensions are, things go full circle. So make sure you look at your meta. Make sure you think about like what's trending right now, what's not trending, what do you expect to be shown up? Because again, any of the decks that we've highlighted across the series could show up and win. You know, we believe that. That's why we highlighted them. We think they're some of the top decks in set 7 meta. So definitely take a look, balance it, test it out, as John said, and then just quest like a pro and you just win. That's how it works. Andy, John, Justin, thanks for being here. Thank you all for listening and encouraging us to continue to come back and hang out with each other. We love it. We enjoy it. We wouldn't record it if it wasn't for you. And so thank you all for hanging out, watching the videos, sharing the videos. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, if you want to learn more about Purple Shadow Gaming, you can go to purpleshadowgaming.com to learn more about what we're building with our community, our competitive team, and our content. And you can get some of the best sleeves that we've played with, Viper sleeves. If you just enter code QuestLikeAPro, you can get 15% off right now. It helps support the show. It helps support the players, including Justin, John, and Andy, as we think about traveling to DLCs and all these other things. It allows us to do that. So we're grateful for the support. Thank you as always. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.